I use my Okay, you can go on.
Okay, thank you, my chairman. Good afternoon, everybody, distinguished members and engineers. Welcome to the 11th public lecture for the Nigeria Society of Engineers, Abuja branch. So today's lecture will be looking at engineering education from principles to application. And our presenter for today is no other person than Engineer Dr. Chindemelu Eze. I believe we are all familiar with the name Eze. So let me read a brief citation from our presenter, Engineer Dr. Chindemelu Eze is a software and robotic engineer currently working in fintech, creating high-performance cloud-based technology. He has previously served as the engineering lead for motion planning at OSA. OSA is the leading self-driving car company in the United Kingdom. His team was responsible for making the self-driving car move in a comfortable, safe, and collaborative way within a wide array of environments. Prior to that, he served as a senior robotic engineer at Highstar Yale Group, developing their motion planning solution for self-driving forklift trucks and creating digital twin virtual environment to test and verify automation safely. He has also worked at Mole Robotics, which developed the world's first robot kitchen as a robotic engineer, working on optimizing collision avoidance and teleoperation. Chimelu has a PhD in assistive robotics from the University College London, where he developed a smart wheelchair for people with disabilities. His work served as the proof of concept towards the 8.7 million pounds ADAT project aimed at using robotics to empower people with disabilities. During his PhD, he also founded the Robotics Society of UCL. Prior to his PhD, he obtained a first class in Masters in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from Imperial College London. Dr. Chimelu is also a registered engineer with the Council for the Regulation of Engineering in Nigeria, and also a member of the Institute of Electrical Electronics Engineering. Distinguished members, ladies and gentlemen, join me as I welcome our presenter today for his presentation. Thank you. Yes, the presenter, you can go ahead and start with your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for your kind introduction. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, perfect. I can see your screen.
Okay, excellent. Let me. Okay, excellent. Sorry, Zoom is blocking part of the presentation, so I'll have to find a way to Okay, excellent. Right, so yeah, so thanks everyone for being here. The idea of this talk really is really to shed some light, from my journey so far. Just to explain, what I see, what I'm seeing and observing about what it takes to be world class. And so, that's exactly what I'm sort of saying here, and extrapolating some of that to how we can um, um, uh, work on Nigerians' education and to produce more world-class engineers from the Nigerian space. As you know, we Nigerians, whenever we study in Nigeria but go abroad, that we end up doing great things. And the idea is, how do we transform some of that back into our society? Because it's still the same people that are doing well elsewhere. So, I mean, one of the good questions is, why does it even matter at all? Like, why bother with all of this? So, there is sort of an undercurrent I'm observing in the world stage at the moment, right? Like, nations in general, nation states, sort of are trying to maintain some idea of balance of power. And what's happening around the world is that the rest of the world is moving really, really fast. Like, the difference between Nigeria and Africa in general and the rest of the world is actually increasing a lot. And what that means is that we risk being left behind, and we risk being exploited, even more so than some of the things that might be happening at the moment. And this is important for us because, we need to be able to secure our dignity. We need to be able to secure our prosperity for our people and for our future generations. And for people who look like us, right, we need to be able to control the narrative, because that's the other thing. If you can't control what's happening, you can't control the narrative, and everything doesn't go well as long as you're concerned in that regards. And like a very brief recap, I was reading about some parts of history, and like when the Portuguese came, in the 14th, 16th, 14th to 16th century, they were trading with us, and one of the reasons is that they were not strong enough at that point to exploit Africa. So they traded a lot with Africa, and then using the resources they got from us, built their countries, and when they were strong enough, they came back to colonize the country. So at that time, they were improving their comparative advantages in technology, and then they were able to come back and colonize the country. And you can see this sort of happening around the world as well. And the key part is technological advantage gives different countries comparative advantage. And if you're not keeping, if you're not looking globally rather than just inwardly and trying to keep up with things, it is very bad news for our just collective survival. As you can see, no one is really coming to the Palestinians' aid, and it's really bad. But the Israelites, the Jews in general, they are very aggressive on technology and innovation. So they are, because that's part of the reason why they're able to sort of capitalize on a lot of what's going on in that region. So it's really, really important. These are important things. These are fundamental and important questions. The other part is, Marcus Aurelius, which is one of the 5 good emperors of Rome, which I really, really like. And one of the things he said is that a man's worth cannot be greater than his ambitions, right? So if you want to know what your worth is, look at your ambitions, and it cannot be greater than that. And the same, I would say, right, goes for nations as well. Like, what is Nigeria's ambition? Whatever ambition is, the country cannot be worth more than that. So this just gives some good benchmarks. So we need to be able to have great ambitions. Again, as sort of repeating some of the things I've said. And right, so I mean, before we proceed, I just want to say, like, why listen to me at all? So what I've focused my time on doing, you've read a bit about what I've done, but I've also like worked a bit at places like Google, and there's a common idea that you should work for large, big companies and all these different things, and maybe the World Bank, and I think those are all good, right? But what I've focused on instead is to work in places where I'm part of the first few people that are bringing things from 0 to 1, like from nothing to something. Because I have this belief that what Africa needs is to know how to get from 0 to 1 rather than just starting from 1. You know what I mean? So like we have, it's like, how do you start from almost nothing and build some things up to a working, functioning system? Because it's a different skill to building things from scratch, is a different skill to then later on maintaining these things. And I don't think we have a lot of people that can actually go from scratch to something good. And so I've been spending my time really focusing on this area. So I'll talk about some of my lessons, the insights I've learned, so far, focused on this. And this is, the idea of the talk, from first principles, from the essence, from the fundamentals, going all the way to something that works. So really building from scratch. Yeah. So we're going to start with some definitions, and part of the definitions will be, I'll just really talk about, what it means to be an engineer, and what education means. Then I'll sort of give a brief picture about world-class engineering, now what that looks like, at least from my perspective so far. Then I'll give some ideas of what I've learned so far from my education and from my work history. And then I'm going to extrapolate some of the insights to implications for Nigeria, and I'm going to propose a vision for Nigeria. If possible, I would like to also have at least for some time, a form of discussion around some of the things I will say here today. So starting from engineer, well, what does it mean to be an engineer? Because I believe we have to start from definition so we can know what we are talking about. So at a professional level, an engineer is someone that designs, analyzes, and creates complex structures, right? And also balances things like cost, regulation, safety, and those sort of things. But the idea is that it is a deeply practical thing. It is not a theoretical thing. Like, there's a difference between being an engineer and being a scientist. The scientist is using the scientific method, which engineers also use, which is about observations and forming hypotheses. But at the same time, we are concerned with taking these concepts and affecting the world and trying to build and create something that perhaps has never been there before. Another definition, a more broad definition, is someone who uses his mind and mental powers to solve and achieve and overcome very difficult tasks. There are other definitions as well by the Conference of Engineering Societies of Western Europe and the United States. So it's a more extensive definition, which one can look at later. At the same time, if we're talking about education, what does education mean? Education comes from the Latin word educare, right? Which means like to lead out of or bring forth. So lead out of ignorance or bring forth, a better version of the person. The idea is that through organized knowledge, you can bring out, the potential of a child that is already there. So the potential for this better person already exists. It's not the same as the person's an empty vessel and you're trying to pour knowledge into them. They already have it. You're just trying to bring forth a better version of themselves. So really, in the sense, the idea really of education is not to memorize. It's not to just know. It is to become. It is about being. It is about, it's about being, it's about doing, and it's about becoming, rather than just regurgitating, perhaps just knowing things. And there's another definition by Swami. Swami is perhaps the person who brought yoga to the Western world. And he talks about, he says education is about manifesting perfection that's already within a person, right? And the idea is that you're trying to make us aware of our intrinsic ability and the genius, this creative spirit from the Arabic word genie, that we can use to tap into the language of reality to effect something in the real world, towards having a complete life. So the core is education is not just a word. It's not just going to school, right? School is just a tiny part. In fact, a very small part of what it means to educate, to what education means. It's education is, when you use definitions such as this, you realize that it's much more than just school. Like what we do right now, sharing ideas, sharing knowledge, trying to become better people, trying to refine what we know, test our hypothesis, always question things, like never just settle to say you already know. It never ever exists at that point. Anyone who says they already know, they have already failed. So it's always changing, updating, and getting better at whatever, at almost anything we want. Okay, excellent. So now we've sort of established some definitions. I'll present, just some key points and notes, some parts about, just to give some sense about what it might take for Nigeria to become world class. And what does world class mean, right? So by world class, I mean, if you look at other countries, right? Countries who have been able to achieve remarkable things. And I mean remarkable things. And these are just people like you and me. I've worked with some of these people, some of the people that are written about. They're just people like us. They sleep, they eat, they wake up, right? So what is special about, these other countries and these other people and what they've been able to achieve? And how come, Nigeria hasn't yet been able to tap into its potential, even though we have really smart people, right? So first of all, I'll start with some facts. As engineers, we love numbers and charts. Isn't a chart on a presentation, then one has to ask some questions. So interestingly, every year, roughly on average, I think this was from a 2022 study, Nigeria produces 3,500 engineers per year, right? So the chart on the left is showing the proportion of this rate, the number of engineers produced per year in relation to the population of the country. And the right, it's a chart that shows, a comparative chart that shows the number of graduates per year, like this rate, over the total population per 1,000. Like if you divide that number by 1,000, just to have some level of normalization. And you can see that places like Israel has one of the highest in the world ratio, of engineers compared to their population. But Russia is a lot as well, and you can see that these are countries that are called superpowers, like major powers, at least in the region they are in. Iran, that is on news as well, is a very, very powerful nation. And you can see as well, it has almost 0.3% of all their population become engineers every year. And then United States is a bit lower than UK, but Nigeria is almost not on the chart. I think the number for Nigeria is like 0.00, like 3 zeros, then 17%, right? Because we have 200 million people, almost the size of the USA, for instance, and yet we're not producing anything near what USA is producing, right? USA would produce, I think, around 200, almost 300,000 engineers per year, right? And yeah, so these just give you an interesting idea of scale. And another thing that's interesting though is like this. This 3,500 engineers, 80% of them don't have jobs after they've graduated. That's very telling, right? It's almost as if, and this is just what I'm saying, it's almost as if we haven't realized what the importance of engineers to the continuation of civilization. It's almost as if we haven't, because you have places like UK, for instance, that although they're graduating this number, they are saying right now that they need to double their number of graduates from around 60,000 to 160 every year. They have to double. And then you have, I'm seeing some comments. Maybe I don't know. Maybe moderator, we'll see how we can address those comments. And then yes, so places like UK are saying they need to double, but then there are places like, so that means there's more work than their engineers, and there are places like Nigeria who is actually resource rich, that all these things that engineers need to use, we have it right here in the country. And yet the small amount of engineers that we are producing don't have work. There's something about that. It almost reminds me of the story about Rwanda and the blood diamonds, where children are on the street and they're playing with diamonds. They're just kicking it. They have gold, they have manna. This manna that Moses was talking about from heaven is right there in front of them, but they can't see it. And then other people come in and take it, and then they make millions. Like, one of those stones could actually easily feed that person's entire village for several years, but they're just playing with it. And I suspect that's the same thing it's interesting. I don't know why, right? And that's the interesting conundrum, that we have brilliant people, we have the brilliant resources, yet, there's a missing piece that we're not tackling. And it's very interesting. So just to give another example, like, we'll be trying to build up the Ajaokuta steel, for instance, and places like USA, Germany, UK already produce steel. USA uses 85,000 people to produce 85 million tons of steel, right? And Germany, slightly less productive, but the reason is that a lot of the USA production actually gets outsourced elsewhere. So they seem to be more productive, but they're not actually doing the heavy lifting. It's places like Germany that actually do the heavy lifting of the production. So that's why they may seem less productive, but yeah, numbers. What's interesting is that in these industries, like around 30% are like specialist managers and engineers, like people with these high level skills. And then you have other people that are somewhat skilled, like diploma holders, they're still specialists and technicians. So that's 25%. And then the 45% as unskilled or semi-skilled. But you can see that it takes, like, let's say somewhere in Germany, for instance, Germany produces 52 billion pounds worth of steel, roughly on average, and they use 25,000 engineers, right, to do this. That means one engineer is contributing towards like 2 million pounds worth of output per year. That is a lot of productivity for an engineer. Like, this is the value. If you're literally leveraging human resources, this is how it looks like, right? Like, the idea is using Nietzsche's concept of the eternal. I can't remember what he called it, something eternal, something. But the idea is, if you were to live life again, right? And if you were to live life again, would you do the same thing that you have done right now, right? Like, if you know this is a mistake, then do better, right? So I think Germany is doing that. It's like they're intensely reflecting and they're saying to themselves, like, if given what they know, this is the best that they could have done, right? And the question is, are we doing the same to ourselves? Are we saying, given what we know, we are doing the best we can with what we know and what we have? I think there's places like Germany, and I know in the UK tries to be very, like, they try to milk things until there's nothing left, like in terms of utility, and the question is, do we do the same? And why not, if not? And then you have places like Nigeria that, for it to take 7 years, for instance, to produce these number of engineers, given our rate at the moment. So these are interesting numbers, and this is just one industry still, right? You can see that, but you can see the potential. Like, there's a lot of manna and there are lots of manna sitting right in front of us right now. Like, it's just there, untapped. Like, it's interesting because for people who are so wealthy, we are poor, and it doesn't make sense. We are wealthy, we are poor. It's a very fascinating thing. So I think we must ask ourselves also some interesting questions. Right. So now I'll go on to sort of now give you some picture of what it looks like. I'm going to work backwards by starting with my journey so far and sort of what I've learned looking back. One is, so at Imperial College, then when I was at Imperial College, it was the second best university in the world. I'm not sure why it wasn't the first. I think first was like MIT, or yeah, I think it was MIT at the time. But at my time, they had increased the entry standards. You know, in my course, they needed, I think, 1 or 2 A stars. I can't remember. This is like in subject like math or further maths. A star means in A levels you have to get at I think A star is 90 plus. So I can't remember. Like I think it's something like that. You have to get at least 1 or 2 of those in your grades. The other thing that increased was my year was particularly, and we suspected, but we didn't know, was particularly hard compared to the previous years. We didn't know this, but we suspected it. In fact, we had meetings with our year professor, and he told us that in Imperial College, you should expect to work like dogs. That's what literally he told all of us. By the end of our graduation, they gave us this very informally, like certificates, but had guinea pig on it. So they confirmed our suspicion that we're actually the guinea pig of this high standards that we're setting next. Interestingly, the next year they reduced things because of how difficult they made our year. So they had to tone it down a bit. But yeah, some of us still managed to get a first-class degree in that environment, and I happen to be among that number. And but what's interesting, like Imperial College it started hard, right? So the Freshers Week where other students are supposed to be enjoying themselves and you know, just meeting other students. On the Monday, we're given an engineering problem that we would solve on Friday, you know, that we would solve by Friday. So we're split into teams, and we were given stick stones, you know, balloons, and all these raw materials, and said we should create a device that activates after 15 seconds of being triggered, and project a ball into the air. I think around 15 meters into a basket. That's how they give it. And they just said, do it. They didn't tell us how. They just said, do it. My team managed to do that. We came 3rd position. Ours was 17 seconds, and we just hit the rim of the basket. But the idea is that they already set the precedence from day one. It was like, this is not a school of theory. This is a school of building. This is a school of doing. You know, from the first thing you arrive, even before you even register, you haven't finished registering as a student. They're telling you, start building, you know? And what happened was, they led us through this fantastic 4 years of every year we built a lot of things, not just one thing, like a lot of things, you know, all the way from, you know, I did EEE, that's electrical electronics engineering. So we did things from understanding like the wave theory of like quantum physics, right? Like the wave theory of quantum physics, going up to the energy potentials and energy wells, and how semiconductor technology works. You know, that's a material science and a bit of material science technology. And then you can use this well technology to create some switches at an electrical level. With these switches, you can combine them to create NAND and like gate, something called gate, like digital, primitive digital circuits. With these digital circuits, you can switch them on and off at some interval, and then you create what looks like, you know, the first adders, subtractors, floating point units. These are core components in all these computer devices that we have at the moment. And we built all of these things, right? We built all of these things. We built these AND gate digital circuits, and then we after doing all of that, we built microprocessors, like literally from, you know, using, for those who are electrical EEE, electronics engineers, using, something called FPGAs. So you can design your own microcontroller. So we did all that from scratch, as I said, from first principles, and you see everything work in real life, right? So there was nothing theoretical about the education. It was everything you do is right in front of you. So at the end of the 4 years, I realized that the mysteries, like this mystery of how technology works, it's very clear. I can see it. I can see how all of this. I can see how our webcams work, our TVs work. I can see how our laptops have to work, right? Like how it's designed, why it's designed that way. In fact, it doesn't even have to be designed in the way it's been designed. This is just one of the many ways. And we're taught this building block so you can combine and make as you wish, right? So there's a lot of first principle thinking in how we were educated. And it'd be good to see some of this in Nigeria as well. One of the things I realized as well is towards the end of my year is that what's important when dealing with complex concepts is definitions. And this is why I stress definitions a lot. What I mean by definitions, sometimes I see it even within Nigeria when we talk about things, we talk about things using analogy rather than the fundamental concept. What I mean by that is when we're talking about, like when we say, what is a cup? We say, oh, a cup is something I use to drink water, or something someone uses to drink water. Like it's talking about what others do with the thing rather than what the essence of the thing itself, right? So if you want to talk about what a cup is, you say maybe it's something with a hole and an empty space, and it has a certain shape and a certain size. There's a strict concept that makes up a cup. The reason why this is important is that if you don't define things, you cannot really control it as a concept, because part of its essence will seep into other things and you'll not know where a cup stops, right? And maybe a jug begins. If you don't know where a cup stops and where a jug begins, then you cannot make a distinction between a cup and a jug. Then you don't have a fine-grained grasp of reality or reality or concept of reality. There's a famous quote, and I think it might be captured here, which is, if you do anyhow, you see anyhow, right? So if you don't define things in a very in a clear, strict structure, it's hard to actually build up knowledge. And even Socrates said it. It's interesting, like I actually found this Socrates quote a long time after I realized that a lot of my insight and innovation has come from the idea of paying respect, like deep respect to what a concept is, the bounding box. The reason is, if you have this clear edge, when you observe something outside of that edge, then you know that thing you're observing must not be part of this concept that you're playing with. Then you are challenged to either expand the concept that you're playing with, or to bring about or to explain something else. And then when you start thinking in this form, you realize that you have a clearer grasp of how to play and build up things, and how it materializes in engineering life is conflating things, like I don't have a clear example at the moment, but one is being able to distinguish what a problem is. And because if you can find out what the problem is, then you can find out what a good solution is, right? If you're not able to understand clearly what that problem is, then you might be solving a problem that one may not even need to be solved, or maybe avoided completely, right? As they say, the best engineers, good engineers solve problems, and the best engineers actually avoid them altogether. Right? What's the point of solving a problem that you can just avoid by doing something fundamentally different? Right. For instance, one of the things I'm reading right now is China is making a more powerful AI chip than NVIDIA, the Americans are doing, and they are doing that by not even using electrons in the first place. They're using photons. They're using light particles, right? So like rather than continue incrementally along this direction, they have taken a fundamentally different approach, right? And to have this clear crystal idea of what it is, you know, because what it is you're trying to do is to make things faster. You're not trying to make AI chips that use electronics. That's not the definition of the intelligence. Intelligence is anything that can get faster. If you know what that intelligence is, then you know that the usage of electrons itself is changeable. Like you don't have to use that. You can actually use something else. So this is what I mean about definition of terms. Like you have to understand what's important rather than conflating, you know, things here. Right. Okay. So those are some of the lessons from Imperial College. Another lesson that I learned was that, you know, so like we are so in my first year of my master's is just a 4-year degree. So straight from secondary school A levels, you do a 4-year and then you get your master's. So no bachelor's or anything. One of the things they try tricking us, right? Because we're in first year, you know, we may not have known a lot of things at that time. So they asked a question that doesn't have a good answer. And they were watching to see what people do. The people who would just create things from scratch or just, you know, say rubbish, they would mark those ones as fail. The ones who said I don't know, they would give them full marks, right? So when was my turn, I realized that like this doesn't make like I didn't even know how to even know what the answer was to this. And I was like, I don't know. And then the guy was like, yes, that's the right answer. Because even he doesn't know, like these are fundamental questions. So the idea is what we're trying to teach us is that truth comes first. We are not politicians. So numbers, truth, logic. If things don't make sense to you at a fundamental level, then you don't then just say it. You know, or if things don't make sense to you on a fundamental level, don't claim that you know or don't use it in a way that you know. Right? Here's what I mean. One implication is you're seeing the buildings in Lagos that are falling down. If you do the calculation, you know that those buildings will not be stable, yet people are building them. So, like, how can you think crooked and walk straight? Like, how, like you're not God. You didn't create the world. You've done the numbers. The numbers are telling you this is bad, and you're doing it. Like, what do you expect? You know. So engineering, a lot of engineering is not, you know, it's not about opinion. It doesn't matter what you think. Like physics doesn't care what you think. It doesn't matter. It doesn't care what you believe. If you don't believe in gravity, jump from a building and see what happens. Right? It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. It will happen to you. Right? So that's one of the things that we're taught at the fundamental level, and it's really, really good to have learned that. You know, it's about truth. It's about humility. It's about seeing things as they are, not as you think or as you wish them to be. So it doesn't matter what you think, in a sense. The other thing is that engineering is deeply collaborative, right? One example is it took 1,000 specialists to develop then the i7 processor. 1,000. These are brilliant minds. So 1,000 of those people, you know, or what, like 30% of the engineers Nigeria produces a year, right? And this is just one chip. There are many other things to do, but this is just one chip. You can see it's a huge number. Things that are complex, you know, things that matter need not just one person. Anything that needs one person will never really last long. So engineering is not an individual sport, as we all know, right? We do better when we work with others, when we collaborate, when we share ideas, you know. In fact, during the Renaissance period in Europe, and this is not engineering, but it's somewhat similar. It's mathematics. Like people would have mathematics competitions, right? What I mean by that is they would come up with their algorithm and they'll battle the algorithm against someone else's algorithm. Like this was what people were doing, you know, and this was a long time ago, even before some places in Nigeria even knew about writing, right? So there's something there about these complex concepts being I mean, maybe in these societies being deeply ingrained in their society, but at the same time, like you have to sort of expose these ideas back to others and see what comes out of it. You know, it's not just a one person's affair. A lot of people have to participate to create anything that matters. And yeah, so because I see in Nigeria as well, I think there's a culture of hiding ideas because someone else might do it or things like that. Actually, there's an infinite abundance of ideas in the world. Places like USA, everyone's sharing ideas. Everyone's talking about what they are doing, the ideas and the rest, because there's ideas are like buses. As one comes, another goes. It's an abundance mindset rather than a scarcity mindset. Okay, great. So after Imperial College, I went on to UCL to do my PhD. Some people accused me of being a sellout, you know, because I'm working for the enemy, you know, but this is just university academia terms. I went to UCL because they had better funding at the moment and they were better at research at the time. They were higher ranked in research, and it was a glorious 4 years. And one of the things I learned, again, it's this idea of engineering research, right, is also using scientific method, as I said earlier on. But again, one has to be strict with definitions, because again, if you do anyhow, you say anyhow. Like if you're not principled in how you define things, again, you might conflict variables, you might conflict terms, and then you make mistakes because you're going on in an area that doesn't matter. You know, in the case of, as I said, in the case of this AI chip, right? If you don't understand what the essence is, you might be tempted to be making incremental versions of an electron-based chip, not knowing that you can actually take a more fundamental approach by using a completely different, you know, source of information transfer, which is light, right? So, and that's just one level. It actually applies a lot in life, especially with very, very complex things that have lots of interrelated parts. It's good to understand the building blocks. You have to know each building block to a high level, right? So you have to know the boundaries of that building block so you can see how it works with other concepts, and maintain that level of discipline to regardless of what you feel. Like it doesn't matter what you think or feel, right? It doesn't matter what we feel, what we think. Always try to just use those blocks and then make it work in different ways. Right. Rather than, you know, trying to conflate or trying to use verbal acrobatics to say something means something that it doesn't mean. Sorry, one of my screens have so I might look towards the side because one screen is no longer working for some reason. Okay, so right. So there's this idea of understanding things from first principle and being precise with definitions. The other thing is, you know, just going on more practical levels, like engineering costs a lot of money. But then it's money worth spending, not in the short term, but in the medium to long term, right? Because engineering research, you know, I was privileged to be invited to work at DeepMind and those places. Although the reason I didn't is because I wanted to go more into DeepMind. Then was more, I think, still is research rather than a commercial base. I wanted to work on commercial things, but they too are doing a lot of research. So they spend a lot of time, and they spend millions on finding out things they don't know, right? Because experiments are what you know, what you do when you don't know what to do, right? You know, is that allowance, acceptance that it's okay to spend money just discovering things, right? And I think in Nigeria, we don't do a lot of research. At least we don't put a lot of priority, because I haven't seen anything really similar coming out of some of the research. Some places are doing well, but in as a whole. There's also, you know, because sometimes you want fast returns, research number fast returns. A lot of things in research, you know, it's literally 10 to 20 years down the line, but it's, you know, it pays in the future. It always pays. You see what's happening with OpenAI at the moment. So OpenAI, obviously, they were created as a counterpart to DeepMind, in the United States, and they spent a lot of time, a lot of energy on research, right? They didn't know what their product was. They just said, give us this amount of money and we'll find out if there's something super awesome to discover. And over time, through lots of back and forth, things didn't go smoothly. Things will never go smoothly. Over time, they've actually created one of the biggest innovations in Longua, which is large language models. And there's still a lot yet to come that they have, but they're not sort of showing us yet, right? So research can be risky, but it's worth it, and why people, one of the reasons anyway that people shy away from it is that in the beginning it's very awkward. It doesn't, and I see it a lot as well, even within companies I've worked for. It's like, oh, you spend a lot of money just to do this thing. What is this? What does it matter? It's not just the output, it's what you've learned getting here, right? As the guy who, I can't remember his name, is Thomas Edison, the light bulb, the firmament, he said, it's not that he discovered the material that makes light bulb. He said he discovered that 2,000 other material did not work. So there's a lot of hidden learnings that people don't immediately see that compounds over time. So research compounds. Research is extremely important. I'll say extremely vital to any nation who wants to take their engineering seriously. Because if you're not researching, you're not building, you're not advancing, you're not participating in the narrative of generating new knowledge. And so you can't be competitive. There's no way, right? Because you're using things other people have mastered. You're just using what they've mastered. So you're not an owner of any technology yourself as a country. And by the time you're seeing it, you're seeing the output of people who have taken their time, their energy to actually master what works and what doesn't work, because it's equally important to know what doesn't work, right? And I'll just say very briefly why I'm focused on this 0 to 1 rather than just work for like big organizations. And when I speak to some of my colleagues in big organizations, it's quickly evident that they don't know how to solve Nigeria's problems, or they don't know even how to begin, because they've never been in a situation where they've had to do things from scratch. Everything has been handed off to them. They're just making an increment on someone else's efforts. But there was a person who brought everything from nothing, right? And for me, that's the interesting part to be in if you're serious about advancing Africa's technology, right? Because we need to be owners. We need to know these things from the fundamentals. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. So moving on to Oxa. Oxa, as presenter said, is a self-driving car company. They have big ambitions. They are actually on a good way towards there. I was there for 3 years as an engineering manager and team lead, but I went on because I think I've learned what I need to learn. Because as I said, the reason for me working in these places, I'm not trying to be an employee, or I'm not trying to just participate. I'm trying to several things. I'm trying to learn things again from scratch, from these first principles, learn from the very best. And I'm also trying to show that we Africans can do it. There's nothing special here. And that's what I realized. There's nothing special in all of these things that these guys are doing that we can't do. We can do all of these things, right? It's just perhaps a different mindset, a different resolve. Like, these people have iron resolve. They have a strong will. Every day they wake up and they are committed to do this thing again and again and again, right? They have a seriousness to them, right? Because these things matter. They're guardians of their civilization, they're guardians of their society. They're the ones who are holding up the pillars of their society. So they take it seriously. It's a matter of life and death to them, because, for instance, if Europe is not good, for instance, then China takes over, right? So these things are seriously important, and it's good for at least some people, people who want to be the guardians of society, to keep this in mind, But yeah, these hard problems are important to solve, because those who solve these capture those opportunities, and they can advance their civilization, their influence, and all these different things. But as I said again, it requires an iron resolve to be able to maintain years, right? Because any one of these technologies will take at least 10 years to fully materialize. Same with AI, open AI. Same with any of these things. They're all fantastic, but it takes that long. Like you can't, there's no shortcuts. It has to take this long. What I've also realized, because at my time, you know, I came to Oxa when there were like 140 engineers, and then by the time I left, there were like 400. So huge success stories. I grew my team from 4 to 10 engineers, and 4 to 10 engineers, 3 including myself. But what we've quickly found out is that one, engineering is about people, but then the things, like a lot of things matter. You know, the little things, your culture, how you the structure, even how you structure things, how you the difference, the link between discipline and reward, right? Like reward and punishment. Is there a strong link? You know, do you make sure that people do things with a certain level of standard and ethics? Does everyone act as a guardian for everyone else to maintain a high standard? Are you seeing yourself as someone of high standard? It's a very spiritual thing, right? It's like we're here. We're not playing around. We are serious people. We are trying to get something done. We're having fun. But these things matter. Every single thing matters, right? But also there's incentives. Like you have to tell them like what's at stake, what's in it for them. Incentives can come in different forms. You know, there's the material, non-material things. There are things around, you know, you're trying to build something great. You're trying to, there's a future expected reward perhaps. But all these things really, really matter. And that's what we found out. But yeah, again, one of the things, again, we found out is like, if you do anyhow, you see anyhow. I keep saying this, but it's not even a joke. It's really, it's as real as it gets. I'm sorry if it's a bit informal, but I just like to add that in there. And it matters a lot because, given an example, I was trying to design something called a work sample for hiring new people. Right, we had gone through some of the process, but there was part of it that was missing. You know, there were some questions that I omitted in this process, right? And the idea is, if you don't ask these questions, maybe you won't get some certain signal from the people you're hiring, right? I did that. I hired someone, and then although the person was a brilliant person, don't get me wrong, it took them longer to adjust to what we wanted them to do. As opposed to if I'd asked those questions, we could immediately put them in the right, like we would have focused on just choosing the right person for that particular job. And then once the job for this person that we hired was available, just hire that person. So we hired people exactly for what we wanted them for. But the idea is that we did a lot of things. It's just that we got one thing wrong, right? But everything was right. And that's very interesting. The same thing with engineering and the same thing with software. Software, you can get everything right. But if you miss a comma somewhere, everything doesn't make sense. So there's a lot of focus in these complex problems, even as it relates to people. It's not about getting a lot of things right. It's about almost getting nothing wrong, right? It's and this is almost like a hallmark of the difference between someone who is good and someone who is a professional. You know, professional trains until he cannot get it wrong, rather than training until you're getting it right. You're training until there's nothing, like whatever you do goes excellently. It's a different level here. Awesome. So just giving what the brief things I've said so far, you know, I want to sort of highlight on some of the implications for Nigeria. And, you know, these are just some statements. And if people have other comments or, you know, other points, it'd be good to discuss this as well. One of the things I've realized is that long-term thinking and acting, not just thinking, but acting is vital. What I mean by acting is that imagine a society that says, okay, we're committing ourselves, our entire being, to increasing the number of engineers coming out of Nigeria every year. So they do that. They spend their energy every week out. They wake up every day in the morning, 365 days a year, making sure that this works. And they do the work. They do the doage. That's what we call it. You know, they do what needs to be done. It's not just lip service. They're not just saying it. They believe fundamentally in their heart that this is what they need to do. You know, and it's interesting is that once people are determined, and this is what I've realized, like once people are determined to do the work and they actually do the work, things happen, right? Things have to happen. Things must happen, right? A lot of times when we don't see results because people are not doing what it takes, because there's a certain level of resolve, as I said, this iron resolve, and a certain level of action that one has to take, and some people don't do it. Not that they can't, but they don't, right? And a lot of times it's because people don't know what is to gain. The very civilization of Africans is at stake, right? And these are not just theoretical things. You can see, you can see what's happening right now. Right now, Nigeria is wealthy. Our exchange rate is going low. Is because we're not producing. Not that we can't, but we're not, right? And it's interesting. Yeah. So another one is this, right? You cannot think crooked and walk straight. It doesn't exist. It will never exist. There's no way. It doesn't make sense, right? So what I mean by this is, you know what I talked about in terms of buildings. If you have a contractor that was contracted to build a certain building, that was contracted to build a certain building, and then he schemes on materials, and whether it's because of lack of care of the lives of the people or just short-sighted greed, whatever it is, that building will fall at some point. Because if the calculation doesn't work, if calculation says it will fall, it's going to fall. There's no other way, right? So you can't think crooked and create straight things. It doesn't make sense. It will never happen, right? So, and it's a really serious matter. As I said, in some of the organizations I've worked for, obviously at the country level is quite hard. But what I love about companies is that you can actually select the people you want. You know, you can see, and I suspect it's hard to teach this determination to do the right things and to do things to a high standard. I suspect it's hard to teach, at least from an old. Maybe people have to be young and ingrain them. I don't know. But what's interesting with companies is that you can literally just test that in people and just select the people that are you, like, in a sense, you choose your tribe and discard the rest because you don't need those people. The other people they'll just be minors in your organization in a sense. But at the contrary, it'll be interesting to see how we can ingrain in people from a young age that, one, things matter. Two, like we need to take ourselves seriously. We need to take our civilization seriously, and then like there's no way you do anyhow, and then this will not affect everything. Every single one of us does will affect our future generations. Just that we're just too short-sighted to see it, and our present reality is really a testament to that. So the other thing I wanted to say is it's entirely possible to be world class. You know, for those who have the will, everything's about the will, and that's what I believe, right? It's not about, because again, Nigerians are smart people, right? All the way from the north, you have northerners. A lot of northerners are smart people. A lot of people from the east are very smart. From the south side are very smart. From the west are very smart people. We have smart people. These people can compete with the very best in the entire world if you give them the chance. So it's not about just intellect. Like you have to have something else. You have to have this determination, this will. You have to understand why. I believe you have to understand why you're doing it, why it matters. You know, Singapore is a very good example. Singapore was an empty land, and Singapore was an empty land. You know, they had big rivals next to them. They had there's India, there's China, there are these big countries around them. There's Russia, right? And then, you know, people were saying, "Oh, we can squeeze these people." And if you look at the some words from Lee Kuan Yew, the one of the pioneering prime ministers, then, you know, he said that they thought we're like orange, that you squeeze us and then you take the juice out and then you take the sharp and then you discard it. But he said they found out instead that we're like durian. You know, durian is this fruit that if you squeeze, there's nothing there. It's not even worth the effort to even squeeze it itself, because you get nothing. So we're like, we're hard and it's not worth it. So these more stubborn people are like, people have to be stubborn. You have to have this iron will to do things that they believe is the right thing to do. If we don't have that iron will, people can just move us anywhere, left and right. For instance, in the United Nations, when it comes to aid and the rest, other countries will, like other like non-African countries will literally question every sentence, every paragraph of the aid that these people want to offer. But when it comes to African countries don't question. They just say, okay, when do I sign the document? Other countries will, before you give them the aid, even you will be tired of trying to offer the help, because they are saying that if you want to do it, you have to do it right, or don't do it at all. Like, don't come here waste our time. We are serious people. You take us seriously. You give us respect. I think Africans need to be more like that. We need to demand respect. We need to be people who deserve that respect, and we need to have this iron will so that when people come here, they can't just come here and think they can do anyhow, right? Yeah, cool. So here's my proposal. You know, we're just here having discussion, but hopefully we'll find a way to do this. What if Nigeria produces 600,000 engineers a year? Like, what will it take, right? Like, how does that look like? What do we, given this vision, how can we step backwards to do that? Another one is currently Africa produces 2%, like manufactures 2% of the world's goods. Why? We're the richest country, we're the richest continent in the world. Why are we producing 2%? How does it even make sense? What if we produce 15% instead? And I'm saying Nigeria mostly. Like, what if we take charge of doing that and advancing that cause, that vision, right? Another one is space engineering. I know some people are still worshiping the moon, right? But there's a better way right now. People are actually visiting the moon as a destination, right? So let's forget the world where people are still worshiping this thing. But what if we master space engineering to visit the moon, launch satellites? It has lots and lots and lots of implications. By getting to that level of mastery, there are a lot of technologies that you have to necessarily develop along the way. You have to understand and appreciate quantum general relativity, right? Which is exactly how, like, this idea of time dilation effect, which is how we can get accurate timing from satellites right now. You'll be able to, you know, create have our own TV programs, our own internet programs. We'll be able to launch our create our own air defense systems, for instance. All of these are technologies that come out just by aiming to visit the moon. So it's not just about the destination; it's the journey and who you become by achieving that milestone. There's also the idea of self-sufficiency in cybersecurity. Can we be self-sufficient? Can we train our own experts, own people? You and I, like people that look like us, that understand cybersecurity from the fundamental level. You know, from the chips, like how you can create digital chips and how you can program it in a way that you can sneak in virus and how you can protect against that, right? And because the thing is, if you're not in charge of your cybersecurity, there's nothing in your country that is sovereign. All your emails, someone else is listening to that. You know, right now, most of our emails, Gmail is listened by the American forces can actually break into it. Even our president's email, they can break into all these things, right? It's only certain countries, some countries like maybe Iran, Russia, China, these people that have taken it seriously to create their own high specialist team of people who can defend against this level of cyber attacks. And cyber attacks do happen. If we want an election, how can we secure the integrity of our elections when people can just break through our digital infrastructure? You know, then this actually puts a hole into the electronic voting thing, right? If you're not the ones in charge of it, how do we know what's going on? And yeah, so because Sun Tzu, the guy who wrote Art of War, says a good general first puts himself beyond the possibility of defeat and waits for an opportunity for victory. So if we don't have a strong self-defense, then we can't have a sovereign nation. In the world right now, a lot of that comes down to engineers, because the critical point of competition right now is technology. And again, can we start owning our own, weapons manufacturer? Can we build a lot of this rather than buying these from other people? Because one, again, ownership of your technologies, you can't defend your airspace, you can't defend your land. Then that means if you can't say no to anyone, like let's put it this way: if Nigeria right now wants to establish like a protectionist regulation that would maybe protect our local car manufacturers, our local grain manufacturers, or maybe we're researching a variable seed with high yield, one, if you're researching that variable yield, and there's someone mistakenly saves that document on Gmail, that is gone. It's no longer our own. It belongs to Americans or it belongs to somebody else. Just forget about that. So cybersecurity, you can see that has been compromised. Whatever comparative advantage the country has able to get disappears. So you can't even build because you don't have this defense. At the same time, if the Americans or because perhaps they are allies, or maybe I don't know, any nefarious country puts their ships in the water and says, "Hey, open your border up to our products," even though it will destroy the lives of your people. You can't say no because you don't own your weapons. You don't have the leverage to say no, right? So there's a lot at stake. So I'm saying I'm trying to propose these goals, and what it would take for a Nigeria that can do this will be a force to reckon with. One, for us to be able to do it, to force us to develop. And once you've got to a point where we can actually have 600,000 engineers, to have 600,000 engineers, that means you'd have educated lots of people, to be at a certain level of intellectual acumen, which means that you cannot tell them nonsense in elections. You cannot bribe them with cheap things because they can reason, and they can see the long-term effects they can subdue that short-term, stomach infrastructure, and they can see the long-term effect of hiring the wrong people and how it affects them. So you can see, like, in Nigeria that is like this is a force to reckon with. It could perhaps even be the first developed Black nation. So I'll just end really with one question. And the question is, what role should NSE play in transforming Nigeria into a society of world-class engineering? Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Engineer Eze. Engineer Omombala, are you around? Okay, the technical secretary told me that he was having some challenges with his network. I think we have to... Assistant Technical Secretary, are you here? Manasseh. Okay. The Publicity Secretary, please, can you... Publicity Secretary, Engineer Kennedy, can you take it off from there? The question and answer session, please. You can go on.
Yeah, Chairman, good evening. Good evening, the presenter. Thank you for this wonderful presentation today. So I just joined late. I was having issues with my phone. I just joined. Yeah, for now, Chairman, there's no question on the chat room.
People can ask questions directly. Anybody that has question can click the reaction button and raise hand, so, or make comments.
Yes, I can see the hand of Engineer Humphrey. Engineer Humphrey, you can take up your question. You can present your question.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I be heard?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes,
thank you. Thank you, Engineer Eze. I was paying very attentive attention to your presentation because it was so interesting and indeed eye-opening. The question you asked would have to be answered. I mean, the concluding question would have to be answered. But I want to ask also, we know that the education standard we have in Nigeria, as it were, is not the environment, the equipment, the teaching, and some other things is not what has been able to bring out the best in a crop of very smart Nigerian engineers. and then to increase our thinking acumen to what it should be, the example of what you have showcased in this your presentation. Now I ask, we've had a lot of Nigerians that have got the grace to access this high quality education from the Ivy League universities. I want to ask, do you people have a means of giving back to the Nigerian society as a collective body, as against an individual effort, just as this that you have done? I ask this because if there is a way that you do a joint action, especially influencing the academic outcome of the Nigerian university teachings, it may be very important to realizing the question that you asked when you were concluding your teaching. Thank you, your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a good.
Gina Humphrey. Yeah, Mr. President, I don't know whether you will take the two at a time or one after the other. Another hand is up.
Okay, maybe two at a time. Yeah, sorry, I'll just, yeah, you can ask another one.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, Engineer Mike Oraike, you can go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, you're loud.
Okay. Thank you very much for this presentation. Although I came in just at the tippy end, and I'd want to ask again that the slides are sent, because to me it gets me excited when in a land of little hope, that there are bright people that are always bringing up the questions of hope, our collective development. And I emphasize strongly that word, collective development. It's teamwork, it's getting together, it's the theory of one broomstick against the whole broom. I just want to ask, I know I missed a lot of your presentation, but I just want to get your insights, once again, is there, my own view is that the challenge Nigeria has is not the brains. We don't have a challenge with human capacity, because Nigerians have gone from this, our so-called environment that doesn't work, to the Harvards, the MITs, and have excelled and have beaten even people from all over the world, and have become the top 1-2 percentiles in wherever they found themselves. Even my dullest classmates were begged to continue their masters after they got to the UK. I repeat examples over and over again. So which means that basically there's nothing wrong with the manpower. The issue to me is the management. The manpower is not being managed properly. The manpower is not being harnessed or harvested properly. It's not being guided properly. And I just want us all to keep thinking and to keep having hope, like this young man has hope, that there must be a way for us to manage the manpower better. So, that's like you asked, really, what role should NSE play? And I think one of the roles NSE needs to play is NSE should act as a collective. It's a beautiful platform that has somehow managed to connect the dots and collect all the engineers in Nigeria. It's something we just haven't taken the right advantage of yet. And we have to keep asking ourselves that question. How can we efficiently utilize the platform NSE gives us? That is my question. So once again, sir, thank you for these kind of presentations. We need more and more of them. We can't have enough. Nigeria must change, and I believe the change will come from the engineers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with the first question, which is very related to the second one as well. So the answer is yes and no, right? And from my own perspective, what I've been doing is to work with all the other brilliant people I know. Again, I'm not, whatever I do, I don't just go alone. I try to bring other people with me. As I said, because engineering is a deeply collaborative effort. Some of my friends are, one has opened a special math academy, right? Because then when I was educated in Nigerian Turkish College. Now it's changed to Nigerian Tulip College. And I think then it was the best in Nigeria. I suspect it's the same thing right now. But we were the top 10, we're top 10 in the entire Nigerian mathematics, right? Because from GSS 1 at JSS1, we already do SS3 work. By just SS1, we're doing university level 200 work. By SS3, we already do 400 level work. And it got to a point where Nigerian teachers could not teach us anymore. So they had to bring someone like Nigerian university teachers could not teach us anymore. So they had to bring people from Turkey who had gold medal in some of these competitions. So that group, that top 10 people have later gone on and they're doing great things. There's myself, there's another one who's a rocket scientist in UK now. One of them, as I just mentioned, started a special math academy. And the students going from there are absolutely phenomenal. Nigeria is now the first in the Pan-African Mathematics Olympiad, which is a mathematics competition of all the African countries. And we're just consistently number one because a lot of the people all the people from Nigeria are from the academy and they just clear the exams. And they clear it so easily, right? So maybe the next thing is to improve the quality of some of these competitions. But the point I was trying to make is there are some of us who are doing things. And myself, what I do is, I collaborate with some of these people. I'm also, I have my own the projects I'm working in Nigeria and trying to teach one or two people skills in AI and software engineering and these sort of concepts. So we're doing things in a slightly not coordinated as at a state level, right? Because and this is why I asked this question with NSC, right? Because I feel places like NSC, and this is why I'm incrementally taking part in some of the things NSC is doing, is it's a fantastic platform to galvanize not just within Nigeria, but other Nigerians that are not in Nigeria, to see how we can, push at a bigger level, some of these collaborations that we're talking about. Because I said, as individuals, also as one stick against the others, there's only so much you can do. But as a big nationwide organization, there's a lot that can be done, and I'm personally interested in seeing some of the roles I can play. And, I can talk offline about some of these things. Again, because there's a lot at stake. There's a lot we can do. How do I put it? It's again the same thing. We have mana in front of us. We are not exploiting this. It's right there. We are not exploiting it, right? And maybe that's a different talk. I can go into depth about all the opportunities in Nigeria. I was privileged to have a long chat with one of our matrons and guardians, Dr. or Mrs. Nkechi Sigwe. We had like a 6-hour discussion, and she was just telling me of all the things, even then in our time, because then, maybe in the 80s, they too were hopeful, and they did actually build a lot of things, but there hasn't been a continuation. There hasn't been this exposure of what has been done, so that other people can now key in and then build upon. This level of this continuation, this long-term continuation I was talking about. For instance, like Nigeria has a lot of gas pipelines that are a bit undertapped right now. I think some months back, there was a gas power station that was created. But actually, many more can be created. And these pipelines have been there for the last 40 years. So what's happening? So I think there's a role for like NSC to expose, the gaps and potential for engineering in Nigeria, just to push the narrative, show people that there's a lot that can be done, because there's a lot that can be done, right? And the things I'm saying, what's interesting about things I'm saying is I'm not talking about things that, this is not a motivational speech like, oh, if you do this, or if you do this is what I think. I'm actually saying things that have been done in the past. This is what other people have done. So it's already clearly possible. I'm not saying anything that, it's let's motivate ourselves to do it. These are things that have been done. And as you said, the second speaker, we are brilliant people. Yes. So our problem is not engineering. Our problem is a lot leadership, mindset, spirituality. When I say spirituality, is the idea about like education is not about what you're cramming or about the fact that you can tell people that what 2 + 2 is. About who you are, who you are becoming, what you do. Is about how does education make you a better person. That's exactly what matters, not what you can recall. I think another point perhaps is on leadership. So leadership is an interesting thing. Somehow the smartest people tend to shy away from leadership. They just want to go into their books and be calculating their equations. and then you leave the leadership for people who have nothing else to do with themselves, right? So there's a lot of that, I think, and I think other engineers might be echoing this as well. Is it like we engineers need to start occupying more leadership positions within the Nigerian government, to put a bit of this engineering mindset, this thinking, this thinking from first principles and thinking from applying critical logic rather than just being politicians and saying wishy-washy things. Having informed and logical policies. So I think there's that as well. If you're complaining about bad management, maybe more engineers should be managers, more scientists should be managers, more people who study mathematics that know how to reason, in ways that are less about emotions and more about what has to be, what needs to be done and what it takes to do those things. So I think there's a lot of that. I'm not sure about this other aspect of engineering that I talked about that is being trained in the UK. Like, so it's not just about knowing; it's about they try to train the ethics of it. As I said, humility, truthfulness, and all these different things. So let's say that happens in Nigeria. Then you find out at the same time, engineers are now in the excellent position to actually be the leaders, because then the idea is that they now need to incorporate management skills, because people are not machines. So you have to interface with people in a different way, interface with machines. So engineers then will have to learn a bit more about leadership skills, management skills, how to deal with people, how to make people feel valued, loved, and bring them together to key in. So I hope I've sort of tried to answer both questions.
Thank you, sir, for that response. We have another person on the platform, Engineer Dr. C. Nwafo. Your hands have been up. You can take the floor, sir. Engineer Dr. C. Nwafo, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. Let me first of all thank the presenter, the doctor, for this important exposure. Because let me first of all attempt to answer his questions. What role should NSC play in transforming Nigeria into a society of world-class engineering? Number one, engineering students must be monitored while they are doing their industrial attachments, because it is during the industrial attachment that engineers learn a lot. If you are serious with industrial attachment, then you can even work as an experienced engineer when you graduate. Secondly, the problem with NSC and Koren is that, let me say Nigeria, is that whenever there is an engineering failure, the government and NSC and Koren will look for who to blame instead of studying the cause of the failure. Before you can know it, they've already sealed the site, demolished everything. In the case of building collapse, there's no opportunity to study why the building collapsed. Instead, they will just clear everything, leaving you no option. So the third one is corruption. Corruption has affected every facet of life in this country. Corruption is one deadly problem we have in this country. the system is that if you can't beat them, join them. No, it shouldn't be like that. If you can't beat them, try and correct them. For example, can you imagine a contractor asking me, a designer of the structure, asking me to submit my headed paper to make me a millionaire in the midst of poor people? I had to tell him to please make your megad and laborers millionaires before coming to me. I cannot be a millionaire in the midst of poor people. So that created a problem. Some people started calling me a retired soldier, a retired police officer, when I don't even know how to handle a gun. So it's a problem. If we can solve these problems, NSC need to play a role. Korean need to play a role. For that, they don't even value intellectual activities. For example, you make a design, to pay, it becomes a problem. So NSC need to do some advocacy to meet people in government and talk to them about engineering and engineers, what it's meant. At the time, I suggested creating a TV program, The Engineer and You. But it's like nobody wanted it. All we want in our platform is congratulatory messages of birthdays and achievements, others. That's not enough for engineers. So please, that is my own contribution. I hope I have tried to answer the questions to some extent. What role should NSC play in transforming Nigerians into a society of world-class engineering? Thank you.
So, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So, moderator, if I could respond to him, please, because there are some interesting points he has made.
Okay, sir. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. So, Engineer Sian Wafo, thank you so much for your contribution. So, I guess it would be interesting to know from my own point of view, you know, how do I put this? Like we are the guardians of society. It's not somebody else. There's no angel. It is we who are holding up the pillars of our civilization. The men and women who are engineers and people who are being put in charge of these dangerous and complex and specialist work, right? So, it's interesting that these men and women who, you know, these are developed people who obviously have brains, they know what, like, they are reasoning, right? They're standing upright, they're reasoning, all of these things. So about why would, you know, when catastrophes happen, why would we agree collectively that it is like it's better to just shut this down and don't study it? Like, I'm trying to understand, like, how does that decision making happen? Like, and who says, okay, is it that we're all collectively agreeing that it's not okay? So that's one question. The other is, when we talk about corruption, you know, corruption has many facets. The Western world is not free from corruption. When I was doing research, I saw corruption right in front of me, right? At least what we call corruption. What the Western world has been able to do is they'll be able to get things done, things that need to be done, they're able to get it done, even in the presence of corruption. And for me, I'll argue that that is Nigeria's problem, is that it's not just necessarily corruption, it's that we're not doing what needs to be done. Like, there are serious work that needs to be done that doesn't seem to be, you know, because when when we're talking about we're talking about, let's give an instance, right? Corruption of forging a degree is a very serious offense in my mind, compared to maybe bribing someone to do something that they would have done anyway, right? The thing about corruption of getting a degree is that you are actually fundamentally affecting the integral structure of the society that all of us are collectively holding together. It's not some God that's holding it, it's all of us. It's our actions every day that is making the things we see happen. It's not devil somewhere that is making anything. It's what all of us have collectively contributed to do, right? So when someone takes a degree, maybe like a medical degree, suddenly people start dying in the hospitals. It's a serious thing. When we fake engineering degrees, people would buildings start collapsing. It's a serious thing. So I wonder if there's an opportunity there for us to remind people of what is at stake, because sometimes it feels like we just do anyhow because we are short-sighted, or we don't know that what we do matters. Like everything, what each person does matters, and we have to. It's almost like, how do I put it? If you're in a submarine, right? You're conscious that if you punch a hole in that submarine, everybody dies. Everybody, including you, right? Everybody has that collective sense that whatever they do matters. They're all in this together. I'll argue Nigeria is in a similar boat. It's not like if someone messes up far away and you're looking at him, you're condoning it. Somehow, somewhere, that thing is going to come back and bite everybody else, right? So we need to keep that in mind. It's just that we forget that we're all in this boat together. And if someone else is poking holes at it, everybody's going to sink. So, and what I've found in the West is that if you, like some of the conversation of corruption in Nigeria is very carefree. Some people have audacity to say something. If you say some of those things in the West, like these serious ones about degrees and the rest, nobody supports you, because they know that the moment their degree starts being watered down, suddenly all these international students will not come. Suddenly they won't have engineers. Suddenly Chinese will take over. Like, it's a serious thing. They have it in the back of their mind because they're looking globally. I don't think we have that. It feels like there's a lot of short-sightedness, right? Because and it matters, but there's no constant reminder that it matters, like why it matters to do the right things, especially in some places more than others. So yeah, I'll say corruption is a problem, but I think is corruption we put corruption in the wrong places. Like, we are compromising things that we shouldn't compromise. So the other one is, it's interesting that intellectual activities aren't valued. I somehow find that strange. Like, what is it about intellectual activities? You know, when we talk about the TV show and the rest, why doesn't it matter? Because I can't remember if it's Seneca that said, man can bear anyhow if he knows why, right? So nothing is too difficult for the man who has a reason to suffer or to endure or to do something. If you have a strong reason, you will endure whatever it is, right? If someone puts it underwater, you will struggle, like your life depends on it, because your life does depend on it. To come up, you will struggle, you do the effort that it takes to go on top. So I believe that if we know why, like if it's important to us that we understand why it's good to have intellectual discussions, then people should be mobilized. Like, why are you trying to die? Do you not like your survivor? If they know how it affects them, their children, and everything. I think so. For me, it's that why I think it's not clear in people's minds the implications of consequences of some of the action, because we don't talk about it a lot. Let me give you an instance of this very shortly. In the UK recently, I got a speeding ticket. I don't break these rules, but somehow when I was driving, it was in the early time. I think I was very tired, but somewhere I got a speeding. Even right now, I don't even know where I was going over the speed limits. They have automated system that just detect and then just send you a letter. So you can't, if you want to argue, you can argue your computer. But they were giving so they gave me the ticket and they gave me an option of what to do. So the option was either to pay a fine, and I'll have some points on my license, which is a bad thing to have, because it's a bad thing to have. But the other option is that they'll take you to a class to teach you, because the reason why they give the option is that if you break this rule, maybe you're not, it's not that you're a bad person, it's just you don't even know why they're even, these rules are there. These rules are not there just to make you, to spite you, or to make you feel like you're doing something wrong. They're there for your own protection. They're there because it's important to drive according to the speed limit, because these rules matter. Rules matter because people's lives are at stake. If you speed and hit somebody, somebody will die. And if someone dies, one, it affects you, it affects everybody around you, traumatize people, you spoil everybody's day. Like these are serious implications, right? So I feel there is, in the West, there is they always remind people of the consequences, like why they are doing things and why it's important. I feel we don't do that enough. So over time, people forget and they start doing it anyhow because they don't know that it matters, because we're not reminded enough. So yeah, it'd be good to understand your perspective, on that. Again, starting from why, like why we just collectively agree that to just not study collapse. Like, don't you understand that we're trying to get better, or is it that we're not trying to get better? So I'm trying to understand how fellow men and fellow people who have their peers in other countries who are doing this are collectively agreeing that this is okay for us.
Okay, Michael.
Michael, I don't know if that is the former hand or he has.
Okay,
Michael,
I think he has spoken before. The whole questions raised have been addressed. I think on that note, let me, on a very special note, thank my brother, Engineer Chinemelo Eze, Engineer Dr. Chinemelo Eze, for this wonderful, presentation and insight. I assure you that most of the issues we have raised and most of the areas we have touched that affect the Nigerian Society of Engineers as an organization, that we are going to address all those areas and see how we can improve the lot of engineers in Nigeria. I want to sincerely thank you for this wonderful presentation, and we look forward to having you also from time to time to talk on other areas of your expertise. Thank you very much on behalf of the branch, and to all the participants who participated in today's program. I want to sincerely thank all of you, all our very senior engineers who created time to be part of this program. I say a very big thank you to all of you, and God bless all of you, and have a very wonderful evening. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.